Yes, Guyana to the world.
Globuspan is a Guyanese dialogue moving towards the realization of one nation in one Guyana. It's a platform that offers an all-inclusive discussion with the pros, the cons, the ones that is taken aside, and the ones that stand in the middle. Globuspan believes agreeing and disagreeing are part of the nation's building.
She is a beauty, beautiful Guyana, with wonderful people all over this country.
Globuspan believes every Guyanese voice is part of the nation's building. As we span the globe for voices from the diaspora and those living home, we stand on our commitment that we are all Guyanese working towards one nation in one Guyana. As the world turns on its axis bringing changes, we as Guyanese must adapt to those changes for a better Guyana for all. Globuspan stands on its axis with its belief that one nation, one Guyana, one destiny must include voices from all corners of Guyana.
With many flavors, 6 different people blended together. Raise your flag high in unity, we're family with one destiny. Raise your flag high in unity.
Good night, everyone, and welcome to Globuspan Television here in New York. We are broadcasting live. Please note that this program has been made available by Mr. Noir Singh and by our technical directors, Mr. Devin Bissoon and Mr. Ryan Gobin. Tonight, we have our guest here, Mr. Major General McLean. But before we get to him, I want you all to know that the views expressed on this program by our guests are solely theirs and does not reflect those of Globuspan staff or management. So once again, to all our listeners, thanks for joining in, and thanks to all our sponsors. Again, welcome to Globuspan Television. And Mr. Major General McLean, let me address you properly, Major General McLean. Welcome to Globuspan Television.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, Major General, you have had an illustrious background. You were in the police force, head of the National Service, head of the Army, and
before that I joined the volunteer force first.
The volunteer force in Guyana.
Yeah,
Can you give us a little background of those forces? First of all, the volunteer force, what it was like.
Well, it was the Territorial Army, it was part-time soldiers, and that's when we were still British Guyana. And so it was the British Guyana Volunteer Force. And I joined that as a private. And then I was promoted to Lance Corporal, then Corporal, after which I applied for a commission. And I got a governor's commission, so I became a second lieutenant in the British Guyana Volunteer Force. I was the first person in the volunteer force to what they call troop the color. The Queen's colors was then. So that was my background in the volunteer force.
What year the force started and when it ended?
The force ended when we became independent, and so we then had what they call SSU, which was led by a schoolmate of mine. And that was the run-up to independence and to having the Guyana Defense Force.
What SSU means?
Special Service Unit.
And that lasted how long as well?
It was maybe a year, if so long, because it was preparatory to becoming Guyana Defense Force. So after independence, that's what came out. So we had the early makings of young officers and what have you in what was the SSU, and we brought in people from the volunteer force to form that SSU and to form the Guyana Defense Force.
And you're also part of the head of the National Service.
Well, no, after that, I then joined the police force.
The police force,
because
okay.
we were then moving from British territory, from British Guyana, to
Right.
become independent, and so they were training. The first 3 cadet officers was myself, Skip Roberts, and Glasgow, Sister Glasgow. We were the first 3 cadet officers, which meant that what we were trying to do is to groom Guyanese officers for police service.
So the volunteer force was like a mini police force,
No, it was the Territorial Army.
an army. Okay.
Territorial Army, right?
And the SSU replaced that.
The GDF, the SSU, and then the GDF.
And in the GDF, you became Major General, which is at that time was the highest rank. That's a rank above.
I was the first Major General. After, oh boy, I served about 15 years in the police force. And then Forbes Burnham wanted to have this national service. And so the Guyana National Service, I was the first Director General of that service. And that really was to build a new Guyana man and to start to open up areas of our hinterland. And the first center was Kimbia, after which we went to Papaya, and that was with good reason. Maybe that's why we ended up with Venezuelan claiming, because the Venezuelan claim was there. And so we had 3 centers, Papaya being the first after Kimbia. And then we had Chumachimari, which we took over, which was also in the Essequibo region, and Itabu Quarry, that was also there, and Conroe. We had 4 centers in the Essequibo region.
So the National Service was producing stone from the quarry.
Yes, we were producing stone from Itabu Quarry. We were producing lumber from Conroe, and we actually reactivated the hydro project. So the Chumachimari Hydro Falls was reactivated, and we had that running and powering to Conroe from that hydropower. It was a very good facility. We had a gentleman by the name of Mr. Cornett, who had some background in the hydro, because that was supposed to start the start of the British Guiana gold fields. And so they created that hydro to generate power for the gold operation.
The National Service started under the late President Forbes Burnham, but
Correct.
it continued under Prime President Desmond Hoyt, Burnham's successor.
Yes, it was. When he died, I spent nearly 6 years in the National Service as the first Director General. And then before Burnham died, I don't know why I was chosen to go and head the Army. So from the National Service, I moved from the National Service back to the Army.
So when the National Service ended, when the PP took over in 1992?
No, I joined it in 1974, I think, 74.
Right.
And I served about nearly 6 years. And then I think Desmond Roberts, who was my second in command at the time, he took it over, and then subsequently Joe Singh took over the National Service. But it was a very ambitious project. We were, according to what we were looking at, a new Guyana man. But we really was one of the best services I've ever served under. Served in rather. And we had about 6 centers, all of which had a special project. In Kimbia was agriculture. In Chumachimari was hydropower and metalwork. And in Conroe was wood, timber. And in Itabu, it was stone. So each project, each facility had its own challenge and its own special area of operation. And of course, we had Jaguar, which was the military part of it, which was in the toe of Suriname. And so that was military. So that's
How
what.
many okay, go ahead.
Go on, no, go on.
How many members were in the volunteer force?
Volunteer force?
Yeah.
We had 4 companies, I believe.
National
Well,
service, rather, national service.
National service. Remember, the youngsters who came in for 18 months. And so we had about 25,000 young people.
25,000?
Yes.
Wow.
We, in fact, the recruitment that we took in was all voluntary until they then brought in the people from the University of Guyana. And I think that was I don't know, it was supposed to be to whom much is given, much is expected. So Barnum's philosophy was that these were the people with the brains and these were the people who should be groomed. And when we brought them in fact, then most of them couldn't tell you what about the national anthem, what was the meaning of the flag, what is the meaning. So those national issues were not part and parcel of the Ghana scholars and the people who were in the university at that time. But it really was a difficult challenge for us because they felt always that they were above the ones that we had, the youngsters that we had there. But it was a nice challenge and it was a great opportunity for us. We had everybody that you could think of. We had, what's his name? KK, Kenneth Kaunda was there.
Okay.
We had Nareri was there. And we had quite a few other national leaders who came to share because they had national services as well. But ours was one with a big difference in my view.
I got 2 questions from 2 listeners here, and they're asking a simple thing, which I know you can explain. The one said, I know the ranks. You join as a private, then become a lance corporal and a corporal and a sergeant. Dr. Rose, can you please ask Major General, after sergeant, what were they ascending rank? After sergeant, what you got?
Staff sergeant,
Okay.
warrant officer,
Okay.
and then you can get regimental sergeant major before getting into the officer ranks, which is second lieutenant, lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, and then brigadier, and then finally the rank which I attained eventually, which was major general.
Major General. Okay. What was Colonel Price? He was a colonel?
Clarence was, he was in the volunteer force with me. He was a major in that time. He was in the company, if I remember his position. And then he joined the Guyana Defense Force under the expatriate who we had, Colonel Pope. And after Colonel Pope, then Clarence became the Brigadier General.
Okay. Now, in the police force, were you once the traffic chief?
Yes.
Explain that.
Well, when I joined the British Guiana Police Force as a cadet officer. And the 3 of us went to Hendon, where we were trained for over a year. And then we returned to Guyana. And every 4 years we went for further training. I went to Bramshill Police College. I went to Washington to the staff college there. So we had a lot of training. Every 4 years we went for training. And the idea was that we were being trained to take over from the expatriates who were there. People like McLeod and other expatriates, Potok, Weber. These were some of the commissioners. And then we started to get Guyanization taking over. So we had Felix Austin, and then Carl Austin, and we had quite a few other Guyanese men, and those are really some of the stalwarts that we had in the Guyana police force. Carl Austin in particular was outstanding to me. He was a difficult man, a hard man, but you learned a lot from him. I served under him in Berbice when he was the divisional commander for Berbice before becoming commissioner of police. But he was a brilliant man. A man who, his brother was a lawyer, and so he read a lot. Although he is from Tom and Austin days, they were the crime fighters in that time, but he learned a lot from his brother who was a lawyer, and so I learned a lot from him as well. So those were I spent 15 years in the police force before I was suddenly plucked and told that I was to go to national service. I didn't know much about it, to tell you the truth, but there was the white paper prepared by Burnham on national service, and that white paper laid out everything that we should be doing to make Guyana a better place, to have what we call the new Guyana man, as they called it then. And really it was a very outstanding service. It was the best service I've ever had. And I still remember all those chaps who were there. So that was what...
Go ahead.
Really the national service was the real issue. Thousands and thousands of young people who came in, and they will all tell you, despite what we may have had as some of the challenges, that there was one of the better services. And it's a pity that we didn't maintain it and carry it on. Guyana would have been a better place in my view.
The national service.
Yes, definitely.
Now, you were the traffic chief. During that time, Guyana had maybe 1/5 of the vehicles it had now. But look at the traffic now. Given today's situation, and I know you're not a traffic chief, but what are some of the changes you would have implemented to make it an easier flow for traffic in and out of Georgetown and throughout the country?
Well, the issue is an untenable situation. You have too many vehicles and too little road, in my view. The roads have not kept abreast of, only now we're trying to open up some new roads and elsewhere, but we just got too many vehicles. And I remember that when we were talking about Nigeria, they had a similar situation where you had too many vehicles and too little road. And in fact, they had to change so you could, if you wanted to have, you could only drive in your vehicle if you had an odd number on your number plate, and the next day is an even number. And of course, what the people did was have two cars, which made it worse. So that you had two cars, one had an odd number and one had an even number, so you could drive at any time, because when it was the odd number, you drove the odd number car, and when it was the even number, you drove the even number car, because that was the traffic challenge which they had. And we have something similar here. We've got too many vehicles coming into the country, and a lot of people feel, well, okay, that is a sign of growth, sign of wealth, which is true, but you have to get roads to cope with the growth of the traffic that you have. And the big thing in my view is education. You have to have an educated set of drivers. And when you look at what is happening, we have the minibus culture. The minibus culture is a disaster in my view. Everybody's hustling. Some of the drivers are not well educated and trained, so we have some challenges. And we can only overcome that by education. In fact, we used to have what we call the 3 E's: engineering, which is getting more roads, education, and enforcement. So you could enforce the laws to have less accidents and more intelligent drivers and what have you. So those are some of the challenges. The traffic is a nightmare. I mean, any hour of the day, look at what's happening at the Harbor Bridge. The early we can get that going, the better. But until that happens, we have the situation where going across from West Demerara to West Demerara is a nightmare. Every morning, all the traffic coming off of the West Demerara is allowed to go one way across the bridge because that's the only way it can handle. And though those who are going the other way across to go to the West Demerara, they will have to, after you finish the one flow, you have the other flow. So there's a big challenge, and the earlier we get that bridge over, the better it can be. But it's a real challenge, and we have the speeding, and we have the congestion, and all the other issues which are facing us as traffic chief. Education of the drivers was the big issue. And I don't know when we will have a bus culture, a main bus culture rather than a mini bus culture. I don't see that it cannot be done. And there was a time when we were bringing in the big buses so that you have big buses or mini buses to a more organized structure so that, you know, we don't have the number of accidents that we're having and the reckless driving and careless driving that is taking place. So we have a real challenge in traffic. And as a former traffic chief, you know, education was a big part of what we did. As I said, the 3 E's, engineering, I think we're now trying to play catch up. I don't envy Bishop Edgell and the present government in trying to overcome the problems of a second road. We have one single road to go to Temeri. Good, up to now we can get to Diamond in a nice 4-lane road, but that 4-lane road has to go right through to Temeri and onto the highway, which should be developed to a 4-lane road as well. Because we're getting a lot of accidents on the highway. We're getting a lot of accidents everywhere. And I think it's education and having enough space for people to move so we don't have to challenge each other on the road and have the problems that we are facing at the moment. But education and enforcement are the ways to go besides the engineering. And I think the government is trying hard to get engineering. When you see the amount of work which is being done on the East Coast Road and the East Bank Road and the road to the Temeri, and if you see what we are doing as well on the highway going to the Rupununi, to Letton, it takes time, but that is what has to be done. That's the engineering that is required. And if we have good engineering and we have good education, then and reasonable enforcement, I myself don't like to think that everything must come down to enforcement, that you must bring the iron fist down, and think people should be educated to be able to use the road wisely and safely. So that's a big challenge for Guyana.
You talk about the East Coast Road. I just want to make a comment here. I have no, let me say this from premise by saying this. I have knowledge of road building. But the thing is, up the East Coast, the contractor there, I don't know who the contractors are, but they grade a place to go, you know, it's a 2-lane road. One you go, one you come. They grade off half of that 2-lane road, about 2 to 3 miles long. And for the past month, they're still working on a quarter of that 3 miles long. So you have to divert into the Michael Hole Road.
Yes.
And when you're coming back, you come. So the thing is, why not do a quarter mile? You finish that, you do another quarter mile. Why you bulldoze the road about 3 miles long and you still, for the past month, still not even quarter mile in of that 3 miles? I don't understand that technology or that mentality at all. So traffic are being stalled because you can't use half of the road for about 3 miles, but yet the contractor is only a quarter mile into that 3 miles. And this for the past month. I've been up there many times. Anyway.
That changed with the bridge, which a truck collapsed the bridge, and that created a hell of a bottleneck. So we do have a challenge, and we are facing that challenge. Um, when I fly over the East Coast, you can see the work which is being done. You know, there's the Indian government, I think, was giving you a bypass road from Oval to get to Diamond or what have you.
Right.
I've seen the congestion which is taking place at Oval because of the massive amount of work that is being done on our roads.
Right.
And as I said, I don't envy Bishop Edgell. I don't envy this government because it is really a real challenge. And what we have, like, let's take the Hope Canal. That bridge was sinking on the approach, and they had to build it up, and we are seeing that at all the bridges on the East Coast as well, where you're having some settling and you're having a big hump where you gotta try to overcome. So there's a lot of work to be done. But I think that unless we got good and intelligent enforcement and education, we will not be able to overcome this problem. Education is the key.
Throughout the country, roads are being built, all the quarantine. I know this for a fact. So it's something very, very good to leave the traffic. So hopefully we'll get there maybe in another year and a half to 2 years. Now, let me ask you a question. You're currently the vice chair of governance and security. Explain that to our listeners.
Private Sector Commission.
Right.
I was previously the chairman of the Private Sector Commission, and I was previously as well chairman of the Governance and Security. And that is very, very critical, especially coming up next year. We have elections coming. So governance is important. Security is very important. So we overcome the problems that we've had before. And I was always privileged to be among the leaders in the Private Sector Commission who are promoting that we need to have fair, clean elections where, you know, we don't have all the nonsense that is going on, and which is still continuing because we have, 8 people charged at the moment for the longest while since the previous election. Up to now, it cannot be dealt with. And I don't know why we can't make a decision one way or the other of what is going to take place, and let's have the integrity. But, you know, it's funny when you look at what's happening in the United States with the the judges of the Supreme Court of the United States, you wonder, you know, where are we going? So, you know, we got to count our blessings. So I hope that we will be able to overcome these challenges and whatever. You know, it's funny, when we had the point where we were going to do ID cards, that was the opposition said no, and they challenged it in court, and so we could not have proper identification. Now we're talking about a similar situation where we want to have cameras or what have you in the
polling booths.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully with what has been happening and what has happened with all the people who have come in to help us to look at whether it's CARICOM or whether it's US, whether it's Britain or whoever, you know, we had all these challenges. So I am very hopeful and I feel very confident that we'll see much better in the new dispensation taking place next year for the upcoming election. Free and fair elections are a must.
That's true. That's true.
You know, security, because that's another big issue with Venezuela. You know, I don't know where we're going, where that is concerned. But I was chief of staff when we went to Venezuela and spoke with the military there and what have you. And I don't know what is happening where Maduro and his army and military personnel are concerned. But this is a real challenge. And this issue that they're talking about, the Essequibo, is another state in Venezuela. is not augurs well for a small country like Guyana, where all of our wealth, whether it's oil, it's gold, or bauxite, or what have you, is in the Essequibo region. And that's the hydropower issues are all there. Though that's where the growth of our country rests. And I'm hoping that some or other we can overcome this challenge which Essequibo is throwing out to us to take over the Essequibo.
I mean, the challenge Venezuela is throwing out to us. Let me ask you a question. When we had the mass suicide in Jonestown, were you in the military at that time?
No, I was in national service.
In 1972?
So I was there.
You were up in Jonestown?
No, Jonestown was part and parcel of the national service area at Papaya. So I know about it and I know what took place. We used to share vessels with the Reverend Jim Jones,
Right.
and share a lot of the developments. They did an excellent job when they were doing what they were doing, but the man was paranoid.
He was paranoid.
Yeah, paranoid, very, very paranoid.
Now, that place has been named after him, Jonestown. It's still named Jonestown?
Yes. Yeah, it's still there, but it's now overtaken by jungle like everything else. If you go to Papaya, Papaya was a center where we had 1,200 pioneers working there, plus a staff of about 400. We had all the facilities there, and was really a good center, very good center. But it was with good reasoning why we were there. We were close to Barometer. We were beyond Matthews Ridge, and we had developed that facility, really nice facility. But now it's all gone back to the jungle.
Right.
But that was a nice center, very nice center. We had a lot of trauma there because on one of our sports days, when all the youngsters were on the field there, a tree fell and 10 of our pioneers died there. That was really trauma for us. We had to commandeer. At that time, we used to have a Hawker Siddeley aircraft from Guyana Airways Corporation that came and was able to take out some of the injured by that means. So, I've had some real challenges in those areas.
Now, Walter Rodney died in 1980.
Yes.
You were in the National Service too?
No, I was in the Army.
Okay.
I was fully in the Army then.
Okay. And you don't have to say it, but what were the Army instructed to get involved to quash any riots or anything of the sort?
No, I don't think the Army got involved in any way. What we found was that the man who eventually died was supposed to have been the author of whatever transpired. So it was one of those challenges which the country faced. The history of Walter Rodney was that he was in Tanzania, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
He was deported from there. He went to Jamaica, and again, he was always a rebel in my view.
A radical, okay.
Radical, or whatever you want to call him. But so I had to go to. There was an inquiry being held, and I gave my own evidence on that inquiry. But Rodney was certainly a leader, but sometimes you have leaders for good and leaders for evil. So.
But my question to you is this. When President Bonham heard about his death, did he call you? Did he want to know what's going on, or he knew what was going on?
I don't recall that I was called by the the, by Burnham on that time. I'm trying to. I had a whole inquiry done on that issue, and I gave a long lot of evidence on it. And I think other people were implicated, but Burnham never. I don't think Burnham didn't call me about that.
But they said that the person who gave Rodney the walkie-talkie that had a bomb in it was a member of the army, and he was parachuted out of the country to Suriname or someplace. Are those facts? Are those factual? French guy. Is that true?
I don't know how that transpired. The man was a sergeant, if I'm not mistaken, in the Defense Force.
Right.
And he was, I think it was old, that is absent without leave. And we had quite a lot of those people who were in the army but not performing and not there. And he was in the Maritime Corps, if I'm not mistaken. And it didn't, I don't know how they got the device. But why would you want to have a walkie-talkie? That's something you can buy. You know, so I don't know why you'd have something special for a walkie-talkie to have in your possession. So that was not a good time for Guyana.
As a moderator, I will ask the question, but you don't have to answer it if you don't know, or you can answer it if you... Now, the question is, did that sergeant acted alone by himself, or was the government involved?
The government wasn't involved. I don't think the government was involved. I think we had, I call them rebel groups or people who were anti the government. And he was probably part and parcel of that. How else, as I understand, that's how he endeared himself to Rodney, and whatever was done was done. But I am not aware of what are the implications of it. But certainly,
if he was anti-government, why would he give Rodney a walkie-talkie to kill him?
Well, I don't know.
He was supposed to use somewhere else.
I don't know. He may have helped him. I don't know. Was it a deliberate act? I don't know. When this thing blew up, I don't know why. If it's something being done by remote control or whatever it is, something that caused that to happen. So. You know, he died and everybody died. I don't know. Nobody.
He didn't die then, but he died a few years.
But he died when he was in Suriname and French Guyana.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, going back to Venezuelan claims, at one time that I'd encouraged on Coco Island. Were you in the army then?
Yes. Well, you know, there again. It's like the issue we have in Suriname. We have the Talweg, which is the middle of the river, which is supposed to be the boundary. But on Coco Island, Venezuela's taken over the whole island. The boundary is supposed to be run down the middle, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense because I don't know how a small island, you can divide it into two halves unless you're friendly and you're cooperating with one another. But it's the same thing happening in Suriname, the Quarantine River. You know, that should be free passage for either side. And the middle, which is the Talweg of the river, should be the boundary, but that's not the case. In the case of Suriname, it's the high water mark on our side. The same applies to Ankoko. Ankoko was to be divided into two halves. It's not. The Venezuelans have taken it over completely. and they now will land bridge, as I understand it, from the Venezuelan side onto Coco Island. So, you know, these are some of the issues which are facing humble Guyana. We don't have the sort of military um, armaments and what have you. They have F-16s and they have all sorts of vessels and warships and whatever. We don't. We are still a Coast Guard.
So you're telling me, or telling our listeners that half of Ancoca belong to Guyana.
Yes.
But it, for as one said, not a blade of grass. He will not yield, Guyana will not yield not a blade of grass. But he yielded half of Ancoca.
No, because might is right. And what is happening is that the Venezuelans have taken it over completely. So, you know, I have flown over there. I have been with my troops on the Guyana side, but Ancoco is totally in the possession of the Venezuelans. Sad,
Now,
as a fact.
okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying that is a sad indictment on diplomacy and international relations between neighboring countries. And this thing was settled 18 whatever.
99.
Yes, exactly. And there's something where Malvé Provo, after his death, said
Right.
that, you know, he had knowledge that the judges, the 5 judges who arbitrated that, one of it was corrupted or something like that. And so that is how all this and this whole issue has come out, you know, the arbitral award. I don't know when we will see the end of that. We've always felt that it will be resolved in our favor, and I'm hoping that I will live to see that.
Well, it's in the International Court of Justice, so maybe in another year or two.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, ICJ. Maybe in another year or two, we should have a ruling on it, hopefully. Now,
That's
me
why
ask
I'm
this-
saying that
Go ahead.
I hope that I will see it in my lifetime, that it will be resolved. But I don't see this happening. Look at what has just happened with the election in Venezuela. It's in a toss-up and what have you. So I don't know where that is going and if we'll see the end of that. Because once, you know, when Chavez was there, it wasn't as hot, it wasn't a heated issue. But with Maduro, it is not. It is now a heated issue. And the Venezuelans, the Americans had actually put a clamp on them in terms of removing all the potential for gold and other operations there. But now it was released. Some or other, the Americans had released it. I don't know if that is still going to be the case. But this is something which we have to address. As a small nation who don't have the firepower of the Venezuelans, I think we have to use the diplomatic route and have our strong diplomatic forces supporting us in order to resolve this issue.
The volunteer force, the SSU, the police force, the National Service, the GDF. You have been in all those 5 security or,
Yes, that is
or
true.
military forces in Guyana.
Yeah.
My question to you now, what do you think are the most pressing security issues in Guyana today?
Well, if you're looking at the international level, the pressing issue will be the issue with Venezuela.
Okay.
And how we address that. And you know, when you look at what has happened in the islands with my friend Mr. Gonzalez,
Right.
recently, you know, but he is looking out for Grenada. He in business, not Grenada,
St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Similar to the Grenadines. You know, he's looking out for his country, but we have to look out for ours. And so that's one of the very impressing issues for us. But in terms of security as a whole, you know, we have issues with drugs. We have issues with crime itself. And those are not insoluble in my view. Those can be resolved and should be resolved. The drug issue is a matter of us having the intelligence from within to handle that issue of drugs. In terms of crime, I don't think that when last I spoke with Commissioner Hicken and his officers, it is not an issue that is beyond control. We can resolve those issues by having a strategic force, which is a police force that is strategic and is thinking about the issues which are facing us, and so we can handle crime. Because crime is a simple issue in my view. You know, I was looking recently that I was seeing in the north, in Norway and those areas, they're closing prisons. They're closing prisons because they don't have enough crime to warrant having people incarcerated and locked up. And I am on the prison management board, and this is one of the issues that we address, that we will try to improve the climate in the prison to help people to be well trained so that they can get up a skill and get up a life after imprisonment so that they can make a contribution to the society in which we live. And that's where we are focusing. And I am very pleased when I see what is happening in the prison service at Mazaruni and Lusignan and even New Amsterdam and some of the others, that we're seeing marked improvement where that is concerned. I'm very happy to see that. So in terms of crime, I think crime is going down, and I would like to see that continue. There is some gun crime still, and we need to look at that critically. But other than that, I think we are doing a good job where crime fighting and prison management is concerned.
Okay. Now, I will give you this opportunity. You have lots of members of the security of the military and paramilitary forces listening to you. I know this for a fact right now.
Yes.
And you have lots of businessmen, your business friends as well, and listening to you. I also know this as well. And you have lots of business friends. You have lots of friends all over this country, at all levels. You know this. But I know one of your very good friends, and I'm almost quite sure he's listening, is Mr. Brian Tiwari, chairman of BK International. And I'm assuming he's listening to this program. And if he's listening to you, he's a very artful, skillful, dedicated, committed businessman. And it is said that he actually built this country. You can't take that away from him. So if
Build this country?
Yeah, but it's actually helping the development of this country then.
Yeah, helping I agree.
Building of roads, sea defenses, and all those things.
Yes.
It was one of the main companies that actually build those areas up. Roads, sea defenses, and what have you. If you have to say hi to him and tell him something, what advice or what would you tell him as we speak now? And I'm sure he's listening to you.
Well, let him keep going, because I know that he did a lot of work on sea defenses, particularly on the West Demerara and even on the East Coast and what have you. And I know he's done a lot of work. And he has a big stone quarry, which he took from me, in the sense that this was a National Service quarry at Itabu, which he took over and really made it. I have been there myself, and I am proud of the work that they've done there, and I'm very happy to see that he seems to be falling into the, the arrangements which will make this his whole operation. He has a very big operation and a big successful operation, and I would like to see him continue to do well and to make his contribution in terms of quarry operations and in terms of stone and all the issues relating to sea defense and road building. I know he's branching out into aircraft areas, which is another important development. And I would only say to him that I hope that he makes good decisions and continues to do well for Guyana.
I support you wholeheartedly, and I know him too, and he always makes some of the most soundest business decisions
Yes.
for this country. His heart and soul are in this country. He wants to see Guyana become as prosperous as possible. And he always put every effort to make that possible. So I myself wish him the best of luck, and he's a very, very good gentleman, generous at heart and everything else. So for that, I want to add my contribution to him, join you in adding my contribution to him. Now,
I was recently at his new facility at Oval.
Right.
I just wrote him today to congratulate him for the facility where I visited. I really is a very impressive facility where he's brought in a new Cessna aircraft.
You're talking about his Ogle Airport.
Oh, yeah, that's right, correct. Excellent. Really something to be proud of when you see what he's done there.
It's one of the most modern buildings you can see in the world.
Correct.
You know, it's built to every international standard you can think of.
Yes,
It has surpassed international standard, I will say.
It's really a nice facility, very nice. And I just wrote him, congratulating him on that facility. And I know I told him that he needs to get twin engine operations, although everybody's looking at single. But where you have big investors coming in, nobody wants to fly in a single engine aircraft. Everybody wants a twin engine. So I was suggesting to him that he has some operations there where he needs twin engine if you're going to have top executives flying on your aircraft. So that's only my own humble suggestion to him.
Okay, good. Major General McLean, you have had an illustrious career in all the military and paramilitary forces in this country. Now, my question to you is this. Were you at any time tempted to enter politics, or were you asked to join the political party?
Not at all. Never had that such ambition, and it's too late for me for that anyhow. So I am here to support the government to ensure that the country moves forward and is blessed with all the resources that we have. We have so many resources, everything you can think of, we have in Guyana. And what we need to do at this point in time is to look at agriculture on a massive scale so that we can feed not only Guyana, but the Caribbean as a whole. So agriculture is a big plus to me. We have the stone, we have the gold, we have fisheries, we have everything going for us, bauxite, and we have a big operation going on now at Bosai, where they're bringing in, they're replicating what used to be done by the Saguenay line, where they used to use a 5,000-ton ship, which will take it to Chagaramas, and that will move from there. Now the Chinese are bringing in 13,500-ton vessels, barges, to barge it out and then to take it from there on Cape-size vessels to go to China. So the future for bauxite is good, and there are a lot of companies coming in to take up the slack in the Berbice River. So we have a lot of potential where that is concerned. In terms of gold, we've just had a large gold mine starting up, and we have like two others in the wings waiting to be developed and to move forward. And I think everything looks great for Guyana. I'm not even mentioning oil, but oil, as you know, will be a catalyst for the developments which are taking place in this country. We have lots of stone. We have lots of sand. I can't see why we are importing sand from stone from Suriname. We have enough here. So I think we'll see a lot of development taking place, and I'm sure that we're in the right track.
I agree with you on that. I think Guyana was scouted at one time to be the breadbasket of the Caribbean.
Correct.
I think with President Ali's leadership, we will reach there maybe in a couple of years. Definitely, because he's doing everything possible to boost agriculture.
Yes.
He has diversified and introduced new technology in the agriculture sector to really increase production. And I think that's a very, very good thing President Ali is doing. Now, let me ask
We
you a
have to be able
question.
to feed ourselves,
Right,
and not only feed ourselves, but feed other countries around us as well.
right. As I said, Guyana becoming the breadbasket of the Caribbean.
That's true.
We have the land to do it.
Yes.
Now, my other question to you, the Guyana Defense Force as what you call an ex Army association. And do they have an ex Chief of Staff or Officers Association as well?
No, not that I am aware of. But we do have a get together very often, but it is not a structured thing. It's something that every year we have a get together for officers. The last time was here in Guyana. We've had it in Georgia, we've had it in New York, and everywhere else. So, but I don't know that we have an ex chiefs of staff. We have what, 11 or 12 of them now.
Or ex Officers Association, senior officers.
I don't know. I am the oldest in the group, because they will have Brigadier Price. Before him was Colonel Pope, and then me. And then after me, we've had a whole string of officers. Joe Singh was one. I served for over 11 years. Joe served for over 11 years too. And we have Atali, and we have some others. We have three major generals. I was the first, Joe was the second, Atali was the third. And then we have Collins, and we have quite a few other senior officers. We had, what's his name? Oh Lord, I don't know. Old age is a hell of a thing, anyhow.
Was Collins a major general?
No. They only had three major generals.
Oh, three. Okay.
And those were three. But there was one who was not a Commodore. He was a Rear Admiral.
That's Gary Best.
Gary Best, right. He equates to a Major General as well. So,
okay.
yeah, so we had quite a few officers who have retired. The two major oldest men were myself and Joe, serving 11 years each. So that is where we're at. But most of the others have had 2 years, 3 years, and we had one who spent only like 3 or 4 months. But we had Best. We had another Best, BESS.
Yes.
So, yes. So we've had quite a string of senior chiefs of staff, or chiefs of defense staff, as is now called.
Right.
Rose by any other name will have some thorns.
Okay. So
But,
are you in contact with any of your chief of staffs or senior officers?
I didn't get that, sorry.
Are you in contact with any of the other chief of staff?
Constantly, all the time. we were in touch all the time. Up to today, I spoke with the present chief of defense staff, Omar.
Okay.
But we talk very often. And there was talk about at one time of getting the chiefs together to try and work out some strategy on how we'll deal with Venezuela.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Yes.
Now, my other question to you, are you in contact with David Granger?
You know, it's funny you should mention that. No, not at all. I haven't spoken to him since the debacle and the other problem. Previously, you know, he was my second in command for the 11 years that I was there. And so we had a lot of talk together, and he went into politics, and I don't know what went wrong, but the whole episode of his departure was the most unfortunate in my view. He was well trained. He was a good man in my view. But politics, you know, changes people. But
Right.
David was definitely one of the better officers, and I don't have anything ill to say where he's concerned. I think, unfortunately, politics seems to have clouded a lot of the issues relating to the APNU and AFC. I think he brought together a good coalition, but I don't think how they demitted office was the way it should have been done. And, you know, when you see how the British people do their, you know, by the time the election is announced, that the results are known, Sunak, or whatever, you know,
Resign.
and supports the new prime minister. And that's how we should be dealing with our politics. That, you know, really, it has to be not another, well, you know, the US is not a good example when you think about Trump and what has been going on, you know, really, it's not a good message. But we don't need that sort of thing for Guyana. We already have a divided nation. You know, when you look at it, very soon, people like myself and the doublers, as we call them, will overcome the issue of race, in my view. So we'll be able to overcome this Black and East Indian syndrome that we keep using as our, you know, beating stick or whatever it is you call it. But really, we need to get on beyond that. Trinidad seems to be gradually overcoming it because they have a similar mix to us, but we can do a lot better than we're doing at the moment.
United States, going back to George Washington, 1787, the United States has had 44 presidents up to Obama. And the transition from one president to the next was very smooth.
Yes.
And easy. Trump, the 45th president, somehow it did not happen. But that can be going to column as a misnomer, because I don't think that will happen.
You're right. I hope you're right, because it doesn't look that it's going to end up that way. It looks like we'll have a tussle, and it may well be that Mr. Trump don't want to give up the position. You know,
Well,
so
he's no longer president now.
yes.
And the chances of him winning this election, I think it's too early to call it, but it's slipping away from him as we see. So I think the next transition with Biden to Kamala Harris, if she wins, will be an easy transition. And even if Trump wins, the transition from Biden to Trump will be also a smooth transition. Trump, I would say, put that in the column of misnomers, and hopefully that will not happen again.
I wish you luck. But let's look at Guyana.
Right.
You know, I hope that we will see that we'll have this transition, that it will be easy, and we won't have all the 5-month delay and hustle and tussle over who is to do what, and we get all these issues going to the court. There is the Court of Appeal, And it's sad when you see what is happening in the Court of Appeal, and then it has to go to the CCJ, and then you got to get upturned in the Patterson issue and what have you. It's really shameful. So I hope that we don't have that again. And so I'm hoping that the next round we will see is that things are going easily, and that somebody, the opposition, whoever they be, will bow out gracefully and say, yes, the elections were free and fair, and that I support the end result.
I agree fully with you, because that 5-month saga should have never happened. I think it's tainted the country, but
Yes.
we have to move past that, because it's done. We have to put that in the rearview mirror as we speak and go forward and have smooth transitions, because democracy will prevail no matter how you look at it. You don't have dictators anymore. You have a couple around the world, like Russia, you have in Cuba, you have in South Korea and North Korea and those places, China. But those are the few and far countries. But the vast majority, the world has 204 countries, and almost 198 or 96
Yes.
do have democratic processes. So hopefully that will be gone and gone forever.
And you have some people by name of Orban and some other people like that who you have to think about,
Yeah,
They're people who Mr. Trump admires.
you talk about Turkey, but still, they will have a transition there. The Turkish people
Yes.
now will allow a dictatorship to. Oh, but
Yes.
I know the way he's behaving, supporting Trump, but should he lose an election tomorrow, what Maduro is doing in Venezuela, I don't know if he's going to survive this time. Time will tell. But the bottom line, Territorial, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, she wasn't survived. The youths torpedoed her out of office. And the same thing might happen in Venezuela. But hopefully, let's hope that those things don't come to the Caribbean islands or the European nations and so forth, because democracy has to flourish. And even
Yes.
though it's not the best way of governing a country, there's not a better alternative. And that's the reality we have to face. Anyway, coming back to you now, the police force today, the big saying there, and I'm not making this up, it exists, that police officers, some of them are corrupt. They take bribe, they do all sort of stuff. In your day, was corruption this rampant in the police force?
Not at all. Not at all. I don't know what is going on, but I'm hearing and getting a lot of reports coming in about issues facing some of the senior officers. And it is a real pity, because I served for 15 years in the police force, and I served for 4 years in the volunteer force, about 5 to 6 years in the national service, and 11 to 12 years or so, total of 37 years of service in the 4 different arms of the service.
Yeah.
And I really am very disappointed when I see some of what is taking place, but I hope that this will correct itself. I hope that those who are found to be corrupt will be removed, and we'll have a cleaner police force, particularly the officer corps, which is very, very important to the future of Guyana. We don't want to have a situation where we have corruption as being part and parcel of our personnel. So I am hoping that we'll see some condign action being taken to put brakes on this situation.
What do you think are some of the most pressing issues affecting the police force? Are the senior officers, or middle range officers, or the lower ones at the lower level?
Well, officers are all leaders. That's where you get the leadership from. And the leadership is very, very important. Leadership for proper crime prevention, proper leadership, proper role of the police force, so they can look up to the people who are in the leadership position and follow them, because they are setting the right example. And that's what I would like to see happen in the police force. We have quite a lot of young officers, people who got ability, who have been well trained, and I'm hoping that you won't find that they get corrupted, because that is what is happening. Because you can get corrupted leadership as well, and you can get proper leadership. So we want to see proper leadership, which takes on the role of the real leaders of the whole society, who will set the example and who will follow in the footsteps of the predecessors we had here.
I agree with you on that one. So, during your time, was the police force independent, free from political persuasion? And today, do you think the same thing is happening, or it has political persuasion in it?
I think that, you know, when you think about all the mechanisms which were put in place, like the Police Service Commission, in my time, I came in at a time by the name of Matt Matheson was the Commissioner of Police. Then we had Ronnie Weber. And then we had Potok, if I'm not mistaken. And before we came into the Austins, we had the first local Commissioner of Police. And, you know, we had respect for one another. We had respect for the people who were in the positions. And I am very disturbed when we find that we have police officers of caliber who are doing less than they should do. So these people are well trained. You know, if you start with your acting commissioner of police, he has a master's. The crime chief is a lawyer. The other one who is now in trouble, he's also a lawyer. And you have
Brutus.
Well, that's the one that I'm talking about in trouble.
Right.
He has some trouble, but he's a lawyer.
Right.
And you have this chap who's a lawyer as well, who's at a division. Oh boy, the big burly fellow. So they have qualified people. It's not as if you don't have qualified people. You have qualified people, and they must put those qualities to the forefront, to the leadership position, and to lead by example, not to have us having problems with who's who and what is going on. You know, I've had a lot of challenges in my time. I mean, you talk about Rodney. I can tell you about Batson. I mean, 11 of us were charged. I was telling them, when I was in the police force, 11 of us was charged in the Batson affair, starting with a white assistant commissioner of police, plus myself, 5 officers and 6 other ranks were actually charged. And we didn't have all this thing about legal advisor and what have you. The police force investigated it, found that we had done wrong, we were charged, and you know, that's how it went. So that's what I would like to see, that the police force looks out for itself and removes the corrupt persons and get them out of the way, so that the force will have integrity and people will look up to the police to say, yes, they're setting the right example.
I have a question from one of our listeners.
Yes.
They're saying that the top police officers are highly qualified, lawyers and master's degree and so forth.
Yes, that's right.
But the question this person is asking, why they do not act professionally?
Well, I can't answer that one, because I am saying that there are mechanisms in place where if they're not doing their work and they're not professional and they're not working in the best interest of the police force, then they should be removed. Because it will taint the police force, it will give it a bad name, and will give them poor leadership. We have people who are trained, well trained. I am prepared to help in every way possible, because I have a lot of training. I've done a lot of training in not only the police force, but I have a master's in security management from the University of Leicester. So I mean, I am qualified. I used to lecture at the University of Guyana to young police officers. And I'm sorry to see that that program is not continued, where young officers can go to the university and be lectured to and trained properly to handle the challenges which are facing the police force and crime prevention as a whole. So I am saying that this is where we should go.
I agree. I think Commissioner Clifford Hicken has been doing a good job, but do you think that you face an uphill task with some of these officers not being honest?
Well, we have a leadership challenge at the moment because I don't know, maybe we should be looking to extend the age range for some of the officers because Hicken is past the time,
Right, I know.
He should be retired. But do we want to have a retired person who is fit and able? Is that the way? Maybe we should extend the life of the commissioner from 55 to 60. I don't know. I am not making a judgment call where that is concerned, but certainly I think we need to look to see whether we can ensure that the people who we have in the leadership positions are qualified to to play that role and to lead by example and not be where we are. We have quite a lot of highly qualified persons, so there's no reason why we should not be able to pull that card of people together to provide the leadership that you want for the police force.
I agree with you, and I've been advocating for the longest while to follow in the footsteps of several Caribbean countries to raise the retirement age from 55 to 62. In this case, I think Commissioner Hickens is 55, but they have to give him a contract again. But if he had it 62, then he continues until he's 62. And if you want to extend it, to give him an extension, rather than people retiring at 55, you have to re-employ them and give them a contract. Why not just raise the age to 62? Why is that so difficult? I don't know the reasons why.
Well, maybe it should go to 60. I don't know.
Well, most Caribbean countries got it at 62.
They're making it 62.
Most countries got it at 62 in the Caribbean. So why don't we join them at 62?
And if that is the position, let's follow the Caribbean model. I don't have a problem.
United States, Canada, European countries 65.
Yeah.
So
and we need people who don't want to be retired at 55 because they have longer life and they have highly qualified persons. I don't see why we should not increase the age. That's my view.
Our lifespan has increased from 72 to 77 years, which is 5 years more. That's this? Men in Guyana here.
Yeah.
So if that is increase the retirement age, and it makes sense. You don't have to give people an extended contract after age 55. Like in Commissioner Hickens' case, he could have served until he's 62, or if he wanted to retire before, he could have retired if he wanted to.
Yes, right.
So my point is, these are things, as simple things that we inherited this 55 from our colonial masters.
Yes.
And we have not changed some of these things at all. And we became independent almost 60 years ago. And we still have these nagging colonial dogmas with us until today, which I think should not exist. But past and present governments seem not to be. Because at 55, people have accrued a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. And when you let go them, they just go to another country to give them those expertise. And that's it. So why not keep them here?
Maybe we should start a movement to move the age to 62. And keeping with the Caribbean, if you're saying the Caribbean is 62, I haven't checked this out, so I will check that out to find out what's the age of retirement for the Caribbean.
You start the movement, and I will. You start the movement, and I will join you.
All right, excellent. All right, great.
Okay, let me know.
Yes.
Now, the other question I want to ask you, turning to the Army now. The military seems to be acting in a professional manner, even though you have some rotten eggs, like those guys transporting drugs for people and get caught and so forth. I think it's 4 or 5 of them. But outside of that, how the GDF has changed from your time to today?
Well, we had those challenges too, you know.
Okay.
It's not as if we don't have those challenges. We had those challenges with flour, you know, with people moving army trucks with flour and what have you. So we've had some of those, but we've managed. It's not as easy to. Is not as it's not difficult to detect if you have a problem with the army. So I think the army doesn't have this span that you're looking for, like the police force. So they don't have a opportunity, the opportunity that we're talking about. So we had our problems. You had, was it 4 sergeants and a corporal or something like that, moving drugs, and that should be an easy matter to handle. So I don't see that will be a problem for the army itself. So I'm hoping that is not going to be spinning over into others. And these are sergeants and what have you who are using vehicles for that purpose. So I'm sure that Brigadier Khan is certainly going to be looking at that and to have it corrected. So I don't see that will be a big challenge for us.
Now, this question was lingering on my mind.
Mm.
The highest rank at your time was Major General.
Yes.
But it seems the highest rank following your time was Brigadier. It's Brigadier.
No, but then I became Major General because, hear me, we had nearly 20,000 people, and and Mr. Hyde's time, it became what they have the concept of affordability. They felt that the country could not have afforded the army that we had. We had what, 8 battalions or thereabouts in our time, three traditional battalions, and you had 3 special forces battalions. And that was not counting in the Coast Guard and what have you. So that's what is dictated by numbers. So in my time, we had those numbers. Then on the concept of affordability started by Mr. Hyde, they reduced it and we started to send men off on retirement, early retirement and what have you, to reduce the numbers. And so the numbers came down, and that's why it came down to brigadiers. And you know, before that was a colonel. You didn't have anything higher than that. So it was a numbers game. It was a numbers game, right? So so that's where we're at this point in time. I think we have to bring up our numbers considerably, especially if we're going to have a threat from Venezuela. Because whatever you talk about it, you know, Venezuela can't drive over and come into Guyana. The terrain is terrible. So it's not going to be an easy one. You got to come in and fly in and try to hold some helicopter pads and some airstrips if you want to bring up this challenge. And we have a model, or we had a model in my time where we could control. I remember when we were at Matthews Ridge, we had anti-aircraft weapons at that airstrip. So in case the Venezuelans wanted to come in, they'll have to face some firepower. So that will happen at Mabaruma, that will happen at Port Kaituma, that will happen at some of the areas, because the terrain is difficult. So it's easy for the Venezuelans to say, yes, we can fly in and take over and what have you. No, it's not going to be as easy as that. And if you look at Essequibo, it's our terrain. All my time I went to school in Regina. My mother was a nurse at Saudi. So, you know, that's where I grew up. That's where a lot of people grew up. So the Essequibo was always ours. So all this thing about Malve Prevost and the judges who made this stupid decision in 1899 and what have you, and now when he died, he made a will to say that he only declare what he knew after his death, which is a lot of bull. And so I don't see that holding any water. I hope the ICJ will make a decision on this one way or the other. Although I suspect that even if the ICJ gives a ruling in our favor, that it's not going to be accepted by Venezuela, and we'll still have the same situation. So
Yeah, I think so too.
that is the issue which is facing us at the moment, right? So, we have ways and means to defend our own territory because of the river mouth issues where you have the bars at all the rivers. There's no big vessels can come in, and we will have an opportunity to give a good account of ourselves if necessary. I hope that doesn't come to pass. I hope that the World Court and the ICJ and everybody will condemn what Venezuela is doing, and for this to be finished over and be done with. And the same would apply for Suriname. Little Suriname is still making nice passes too, in terms of the new river triangle. Somebody decided now that the Quarantine River, the rail flow when it gets down there, the rail flow takes in their piece. And they actually draw a map showing it, that the river triangle is theirs. So we do have a problem, and we have to address that as well. We already dealt with the offshore one, which was the 10-degree angle from there offshore by 63 beach, so that we do have that resolved, but we still have the new river triangle down at the bottom that we have to address. So those are some of the challenges which are facing us. Those are the international challenges. In-house challenges, dealing with crime and issues, can be addressed in my view.
I want to tell our listeners that I normally receive a large number of questions from some of you, but please bear with me. Time does not permit me to ask all the questions you're asking me.
All right.
But I will ask this question, which
Yes.
I think makes sense. One of our listeners wants you to explain what is a battalion.
600 men, about 600 men. 4 companies of about 120, making about 600 men.
600 men is a
Battalion.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, you said you have been in the Army for 11 years. Now, have you ever... Oh, you have served for 11 years. Yeah. During that period of time, was anyone court-martialed, or if so, how many?
I don't recall. Yes, we have court-martial, and we've marched out. People broke the swords and marched them out because of corruption. I can't recall how many we did, but I used to have a big parade when that happens for an officer to be court-martial and sent out. What's his name? Gadraj, who was an officer, was charged and put before court-martial and what have you. So we've done this before, but I can't remember how many of them in my time, or in Joe Singh's time, or in Atali's time, or is in Collins's time, or best of it is.
Okay. Yeah, as you said, there are 2 best, one BST, one BSS.
One is BSS and the other is BST.
Right, right. Now,
one is easily known because he is a rear admiral.
And also remember, we have Prime Minister Mark Phillips, he's a brigadier too.
Yes, that's right, correct.
And they already did an excellent job in the Army as well. Now,
he served with me when he's a captain. He served with me as a captain. Now I have to salute him and say, how are you, sir?
But the thing is, Ahordy was an excellent administrator as well.
Yes. You don't get there just like that,
Okay. Now, you talk about increase the military.
Yes.
Do you know the strength of the military today? And if so, how much more should be added? What is a suitable level of manpower for you in the military?
I told you what we had in my time. Remember, we had what they call a people's militia.
Right.
Every citizen a soldier, that was the philosophy. And we had maybe 10, 12,000 people in that people's militia.
Right.
And so the other 10,000 or there was in the army. And that's
Right.
when we were up to where I was saying we had about nearly 8 battalions, a field engineers battalion, a parachute battalion, a jungle battalion, and we had 3 infantry battalions as well. So we had the numbers. Now, I don't know what the numbers are now. I am not part and parcel of it, so I don't know what the numbers are. But certainly, we used to have an artillery battalion. We used to have, where we had a lot of pieces. We had big pieces of weapons and ammunition. 122 millimeter cannon, 76 millimeter cannon. We had 120 millimeter mortars. We had a lot of equipment at one of the battalions that we have on the highway. So we have a capacity. We had Bofors, anti-aircraft weapons and what have you. So we were well equipped, in my view, very well equipped. I don't know what the status is now. I know we had a big explosion in one of the battalions where we lost a lot of equipment. We lost some men too. But other than that, I don't know what the numbers are now. But certainly, whatever they are, they need to be upgraded significantly, given the threat from Suriname. And not from Suriname as well as Venezuela. But the threat, it doesn't mean that we could defend ourselves in the sense that we could defend our airstrips, because you can't drive into the jungle here and come in with vehicles and what have you. So you have to come in the rivers, you have to come offshore, and you have to use the landing strips that we have, and we'll have to defend those, in my view.
Okay. Now, it is my understanding that the Army had bases in the coastal belt. You had one at Timeri, one at Garden of Eden, one at Unbawat, and you have Camp Ayagana. You had any more bases on the coastal belt?
I didn't understand. Where was that?
Like Unbawat, you had a agricultural group up there?
We had one used to be over in West Demerara too.
Okay, you had one you had Timeri, you had Unbawat, you had Garden of Eden. You have Garden of Eden.
It was the big establishment. We used to feed ourselves in eggs, chicken, pork, and what have you from Garden of Eden. Still do as far as I'm aware.
Are those areas still in existence now?
Yes, Garden of Eden is very much there.
Unbawat?
Unbawat, I am not too sure. I think so though, but I'm not sure.
Major General McLean, we've come to the end of the program. Can you believe an hour and a half went by so fast? So I would ask you to make a closing statement.
Well, all I can say is that I was very proud to be given the opportunity to lead the Guyana Defense Force, and as the longest serving Chief of Staff and the longest serving Major General. I was proud to be part and parcel of it, and since I've retired, I'm only hearing good things from people about, oh, when I was there, this, when I was there, that. But the force continues to be a force to be reckoned with. I would like to see us be better equipped than we are, because I had a Air Corps where we had maybe 13 aircraft in my time. We had 5, we have 3 Mi-8s, which is the Russian aircraft. We had 5 helicopters other than those 8. We had about 6 islanders, and we had like 2 aircraft as well. So we had quite a few aircraft. We had people well trained to fly whatever we had. And so I would like to see the Army be better equipped than it is at the moment, with more manpower to make it a real challenge for any would-be aggressor and Venezuela is already seen as one. And I know we can't match their firepower, match their F-16s and their other vessels and what have you, but with diplomacy and with a force that you can hold the situation, and I think that we can do a better job than we're doing at the moment. So I would like to see the force be increased in terms of manpower, in terms of capacity, and in my time we were bringing in some cascavels and other heavier equipment. So I would like to see the Army be better equipped to handle the situation that we're facing.
Thank you very much, Major General McLean. It was a pleasure having you. Now, I want to say to all our listeners, a very special thanks to all of you for tuning in tonight. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to Noir Singh for making this program available. Devin Bissoon, Ryan Gobin, our technical directors. And once again, thanks to all our listeners far and wide, at home here, in the diaspora, and throughout the world. Remember this, Glowspan Television this program is broadcast every Monday night from 7:30 to 9 p.m. You can tune in with us via Facebook or YouTube and any other social networks. So thanks again to all of you. And I want to say this in closing. I still think the retirement age, as Major General McLean is saying, should increase to at least 62 years old. I still think we need better internet services because it goes on and off all the time. And I also think that we need to look at ourselves and see what we can do for our country, as Kennedy puts it, and not what our country can do for you. So I will quote Kennedy, the late John Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I want to say this as well. There's been a very sad incident occurred of the quarantine, I think was on Sunday night. There was a woman having a barbecue away from the roadside in Parapet. She has 8 children. I think it's 1 senior and 7 minors. And a car swooped in and killed her.
Oh boy.
Now, her name is Simone Fortune from Cromarty Village. I don't have any more information on her, but whatever information we have, I'm going to post it on the website. If you can help this family, they're very, very poor. I don't even think they have enough money for burial of this woman, this Fortune. But 8 children, she died and left, and she wasn't nowhere on the roadside. So it said the car was driving in excessive speed. So I hope some of you can maybe make contacts one way or the other from the quarantine and see how we can probably make a contribution to help this family, if you so desire. Thank you very much. Again, Mr. General, thank you very much for coming on. We have to bring you back because I still have a number of more questions to ask you. But as a subsequent time, we'll bring you back. And thanks again to all our listeners, Noir Singh, Devin Bissoon, Ryan Gobin. Thank you very much, and more so to our sponsors. And a very pleasant good evening to all of you.